Hi guys, today I want to show you some journal stencils that I've just received through the post. I saw them on a Facebook post in one of the journaling or planner groups, and somebody said that they had bought a set of 20 stencils and that they were very cheap. So I followed the link and it came to the American Amazon and it wouldn't ship to the UK, so I searched for I think it was like 20 set of journal stencils or something like that, and it came up with these, and they were less than £12. So you can't get much here now for under £1, and these were under £1 because you get 20 in the set for under £12, so that's really good. So I have tried them out and had a really good look at them, and I wanted to do a review. So this is my review. Right, so if you know anything about my journaling style or my planning style, you will know that I don't like things that are quite temporary. So for example, a sticker that only will come once in a pack, and I love that sticker and I want to use it tons of times, but it only comes once, so I'll have to keep rebuying the pack. I don't like things like that, because I don't like having to spend my money on something that I can only use once, and that if I want to use it again I'll have to purchase a bulk thing that will cost me money to buy things that I don't want to buy just because there's one thing in it that I like, or a few things in it that I like. So I really like buying things that I'm going to be able to use again and again, even if it's only a few times, but I really love the thing, or infinite times, which is what you get with stamps and stencils and things. So that's why I like the idea of stencils. I've never had one of the Hobonichi stencils or anything like that. I've never used them before. I've tried to make my own. Actually, in this drawer here, I used to work in the radiology department of a hospital, and we were given a load of blue X-ray film that they no longer use because they've gone digital. So the blue one is for small things like hands, and I tried to make my own stencil, and it turned out okay. That's supposed to be like a museum, but it's much harder to make than I thought it was, and I don't have many dies for my die cutting machine. I don't have a cameo or a silhouette or anything like that, so I can only go and use the shapes that I do have, which are circles and things like that, which don't have much variety. So I was excited to be able to buy some cheaply online that I could actually use, and where somebody has obviously put in a lot of thought about what people like to use in their planners and journals. So before I show you the actual stencils, I wanted to tell you what they look like when I actually got them out of the packet. So they come in a pack of 20, and each one is individually wrapped. So I'm just going to put them to one side for a minute and I'll show you what they look like. In the packet, there was obviously a stencil in the packet. That's the packet. It looks like they could have been individually sold. So it looks like you could hang them up in a shop, and they've got barcodes. I can't remember if each of the barcodes was different, but the reason why I think that they might have been sold individually rather than always as a set of 20 is because there are some repeated shapes, and I'll show you that in a minute. So they were made in China, and I bought them from Amazon shop that was based in Hong Kong. So it did take a while to get here, but it was actually a lot quicker than what Amazon predicted. So I was pleased about that. Sometimes when you buy things from cheap sites that are based abroad, you might assume that they are poor quality, and some things are, and some things are really, really good quality and are just cheap, and you're really pleasantly surprised. These, they are really cheap, and I was pleased about the quality of them for the most part. They're not a very tough plastic like this one. This is just a circle stencil. I got it from Tiger. It's proper plastic. These are very flexible, very floppy, but they work. They are easy to carry around. You can put them in between the pages of your journal to take with you on the go. If you want to, you know, take them with you when you're going to wait for something or going to stay somewhere, you can easily take them. But the quality of some of the parts wasn't that brilliant. Obviously what's happened with them is that they have been cut out by a machine. It might be a die cutting machine or something like that, but some of the shapes, the plastic that was supposed to be cut out remained. So for example, here's just a few of the shapes. I've thrown so many of these away. Little shapes that were supposed to be cut out, but they stayed stuck to the plastic, which isn't a problem for most of them because you could just like sweep them off, brush them off. But some of them really got stuck. You had to pull quite hard, and then on one or two of them really at the end, so sort of numbers 17 or something out of the 20, they were so badly cut, not the shapes themselves but removing the actual pieces of plastic, that I actually had to finish the cut with scissors. A few millimetres of the plastic hadn't been cut through and I had to finish off the shape. So you know, they're under £1 each. You can't guarantee that they're going to be perfect quality, but I think for the money that they were good quality, and I don't mind doing that once, you know, I only have to do it once job of removing the rest of the plastic. Right, so my first impressions were very good because there are a lot of shapes. It's a pack of 20, obviously, but each one is different. However, there are some repeated shapes, and I'll show you that in a minute. So, I am going to show you each individual stencil and the version of what it looks like when it's drawn out. So, this is my sort of examples book. It's a pretty book from Paper Chase, and the sides look like butterflies, and I'm going to do a proper video of this in a few months' time when I've finished filling it out. But it's basically where I do things that are examples of what I could use in my journal. So for example, if I see some doodles online that I really like, you know, for example, the YouTube channel where Sarah, the lady, does doodles, I draw them out. I'll post a link to her channel below. I think it's really good channel, and I'll show you the book with all my, you know, that sort of thing in future when I've finished it. I hope you can see these drawings. Yeah, you can faintly see them. I think I'll hold them up. My lighting isn't very good. Right, so I've done it in not chronological order, I've done it in number order, so we've got 1 to 20. And I'll show you what each stencil looks like. So I've basically just drawn around the stencils. The first thing that I want to say is most of the shapes are really well thought out. Most of them are things that people would use in their planners or journals. We've got a lot of these rectangular boxes, and we've also got quite a few weather things, and a few bows and, well, not bows, ribbon, bunting, that sort of thing. And that's one of the reasons why I think that they may have been sold individually before, because there's quite a lot with the rectangles and quite a lot with the ribbons and the bunting and the tag shapes and things, and I don't think that people would really need the same shape repeated that many times. So I think there may be an option somewhere in the world where you can buy them individually, but obviously they came as a set, so you're just going to have to put up with the repeated shapes. But I think all in all you've got a lot of individual shapes. Okay, so number 1, you have rectangles, some repeated shapes such as that, but I don't think it's too bad to have a couple of the shapes repeated on the same stencil, because you could use just that shape, but if you wanted to do several of those shapes in a line, you might not be able to align them very well. So I think it has been well thought out. Like for example, if you wanted to do sort of hearts or square bullet point for a list, if you just had one square, it might be hard to line that square up every time, so they've got them in a list. sort of format, the same as these ones, the same as the hearts and things like that. Then you've got two clouds, and I'm not quite sure why you've got two, because unless you use the clouds for a decorative purpose, like for example drawing a cloudy sky, if you were to use the clouds just for weather signs, you don't need two of the same size. But perhaps, especially as you've got the birds there, those are supposed to be birds, maybe that is just a decorative sort of sky scene. Then you've got parts that you put together. So for example, there's a ribbon banner, and you would put these ends of the ribbon in next to them as part of the shape, and you've got several of these designs in the stencils. So I'm not going to tell you about all the shapes on the stencils, but what I am going to tell you when I come across them is things I really like and things I don't like. So here you've got two straight lines, and I don't like these, and the reason I don't like them is because this middle piece of plastic here is really flimsy. It's really easy to move with your pencil or your pen when you are drawing the line. You can easily push it, and then your line isn't straight, and you've gone underneath and make a wobbly line or a bowed line. This is where I don't think the stencils are very well designed on several parts, and I'll show you a few of the other shapes where I don't think they're well designed in these instances. These are things that I would personally, it would put me off using them because they are a pain to use. My piece of advice with these is to use a pencil to do the designs. I started off using a pen, and you may be able to see that the stencil has got a bit dirty because the ink has transferred onto the stencil. That's why you can wipe that off. But if you make a mistake, which is quite easy to do with some of the more complex shapes, you can't edit it if you've used a pen that is not able to be erased. I mean, with a friction pen you can, but with a pencil you can go over the lines with any pen you want and then rub the pencil out. If you make any mistakes, you can do it again. But also when you've got a very fine shape, for example on number 2, you've got these very thin lines. If you had a thick pen, you wouldn't be able to do very fine lines, a very like 2 lines for that whole shape. You would just do one thick line, and that may not be able to be the shape you want, but with a pencil you can then go around the outside. It's more customizable if you use a pencil and then go over it with a pen, so that's what I would recommend. So on number 2, you've got a variation of these shapes, and what you can use them for is customizing your bunting. So if you use a straight line or a curved line, you can make your own bunting using one or more of these shapes. So you can use your bunting out of hearts or diamonds or whatever. And then there's other things that you might use in your planner. So for example, you've got the ribbon, which is very much like these ones over here. You've got arrows and chevrons and more list shapes and things. And then, as I said, there are repeated shapes. So for example, you've got the boxes. And really, how many boxes do you need? I think that this box is practically the same size as this one. In different stencils, you've got very similar shapes. For example, you've got the square list and the heart list there. You've got practically the same thing on number 1, so I don't think that all the shapes are usable in their own right because they're repeated. You've got this speech bubble, which I think is clever because even though these look like corners of the circle, they're not. If you carried on the circle, that would be the corner of your speech bubble for somebody standing here, or there, or up there, or up there. So this shape you can make into a speech bubble for whichever direction you wanted it to face. I think that's clever. There's another one of those 2 rectangles that just move apart, which I don't think is clever. Arrows and things, I like that. And then this one's fairly straightforward. on some of them I feel like they've just used the rectangles as sort of a way to fill up space. They don't necessarily need this many rectangles. You've got sort of a list there, you've got bullet points and things. And here you've got lots of weather symbols. I'm particularly excited about this little symbol here, and I have no idea what it's supposed to be, but to me it looks like an alien spaceship, which I'm trying to figure out how that fits in with all the weather ones, but there you go. You've got the moon, lightning, cloudy, rain, sun. One of the problems with these shapes is that, as I said before, they're not always very well cut out, and actually the suns, these two here, were particularly difficult to pick the bits of plastic that remained out. So on the tiny little holes it is really quite difficult to use them, and I'll show you that on a few others later, because the plastic that remains, you may be able to pick it off, but then you're left with a jagged edge and you may not be able to use it, which is why I think if you then use a pencil you can rub it out and draw the shapes back in and tidy it up. You've got proper bunting there, so you can make your own bunting using this one, but there's some more bunting. Bunting is a common theme on these, I think, because they know that people like to use that sort of thing in a journal. This sort of shape, the curvy edge shape, so this one here, I find it quite difficult to use. Your pen is or your pencil is quite difficult to control when you're going over at quite a speed. You'd have to really slow down, which is not my favourite thing to do. If I'm journaling, I want to do it at my own pace, not to slow it down for some, you know, shape that is harder to do. So that isn't my favourite way of doing a shape in a journal. I possibly won't use this shape. Again, you've got lots of these sort of shapes that you can use for bullet points and or bullets in your bullet journal. And then you've got other shapes, things that I think that really they've thought well about this, that maybe somebody who's into journals or planners themselves use, because this teardrop is a very good one to include, because years ago Martha Stewart for Avery, which was sold in Staples, used teardrop shaped removable sticky label things, and people use them for all sorts of things like recurring tasks and things, and there's one that you can draw in your planner or your journal. So certain ones of these shapes are definitely usable in your planner, and I think that they have been designed by somebody who has seen the things that have been popular in the planner community over the years. Another one is this sort of starburst, sort of, it catches your attention shape. And then there are other things that are just pretty. And then I don't like these letters. Each of the stencils has got a number at the top so that you know the number. They are a bit tricky to use because the numbers aren't well cut out, but these letters aren't well cut out either. So personally I wouldn't use these. It's been quite difficult for me to do the W neatly because either the letters aren't well cut out or they're just not very easy to use. Right, here's some social media signs, symbols. I've just realised that I haven't finished drawing in the Twitter bird, but there you go. There's some more bullets. So as you see, there is a lot of repetitive shapes in the sort of usable journal things. There's also some symbols here. There's a pin sign, a shopping sign, and I think that's a taxi. I'm not quite sure. I'm really not sure. You've got Facebook, Google Plus, Twitter, Pinterest. I don't know what those two are. I don't know all the social media. Right, and then here's a very exciting one for some certain people. So here you had a few of the usable symbols that you might use in your planner that you would possibly buy stickers for, but here's loads more. So you've got more weather. I like the snow, the snowflake, but it's quite hard to draw around because it's got a lot of little parts. You've got food, travel, hobbies, then you've got more social media signs, then more hobbies, so sort of fitness ones. I love the little yoga lady. I'm definitely going to use that. A present, a light bulb, balloon, shopping, book, things like that. Cat, dog, fish bone, that sort of thing. You've got some numbers, and then you've got more bullets which are usable with these lines, which can be like list lines. Then you've got more decorative things. So again, you've got these shapes that you use with the bunting. So there's a repeat again, and actually they're a bit bigger, but still it's a repeated shape. And on this one, you don't have many things. Some of the stencils, you don't have much that fills the space. And you've got more ribbons and things like that. So another repeated load. More ribbons, even more ribbons. Some arrows. I do like the arrows. Chevrons, another speech bubble, another curly circle thing. More taggy sort of ribbon shapes, more boxes. I think that they did run out of ideas on some of them, but then they may be sold separately, in which case you may pick 3 or 4, and then the repeated shapes would maybe not occur in the 3 or 4 that you've picked. We've got more icons here, so we've got more weather, some technology ones, some leaves and things. I love the doggy paw prints. Mind you, they could be cat paw prints. Crab, food, snail, and then we've got some travel ones. So you've got the Sydney Opera House, a croissant, which I love, a windmill, the Statue of Liberty, which is another difficult shape to use because it's got so many little parts. I think that's supposed to be Big Ben. Pyramids, and the Leaning Tower of Pisa, which was particularly difficult to draw around because it's got so many little bits. It's really hard to use. This shape here, I have no idea what it's supposed to be, some sort of decorative thing. That was really hard to draw around because when you've got a lot of changing of directions when you're drawing, it makes your pen or your pencil go wild if you're not going really slowly and really looking and concentrating at the stencil, predicting when you're going to have to change direction, and then really looking at what you're doing, which is quite hard when your hand is directly over the stencil. It's quite hard to look at the stencil. So that is one that I don't think I'll be using at all. More bunting symbols that you can use there. Obviously you can use these symbols in their own right, and one of the brilliant things that I haven't talked about yet about these symbols is that you can take them out completely out of the context. So for example, in this one you've got these chevrons, but if you didn't want chevrons, if you just wanted some shapes that are just like that, or even if you didn't want to use the whole ribbon shape, if you just wanted to use that rectangular box, you can do. Another thing I really like is that you can obviously turn the stencil around whichever way. So let's take this this umbrella here. Say you were drawing a little person, you were doing a little doodle, and you wanted that umbrella to not face that way but face that way. You can just flip it over and draw it whichever direction you want. There's no way that you have to do it, and you can also do it upside down, whatever you like. So obviously you don't have to use these shapes as the stencils suggest you should. So coming back to number 14, let me find number 14. I just want to show you something. Yes, I've forgotten to do a shape. Oh, I'm going to have to draw that one back in. Oh well. These little shapes here, they're really fiddly, and this is where I don't think that the stencils have been very well designed either. We saw earlier that the rectangular boxes weren't the lines that were too close together moved. These ones do too. So for example, you've got this spiral here, that's actually fixed quite well. That doesn't move very much if you sort of push it with your pen, but in number 15 it's really fiddly. And I'm just having a look at the rest if there's any others. Yes, number 19 is super fiddly, and these were really difficult to use. So the more detail, the smaller the design, the more difficult it is to use. So you don't have a lot that fixes the plastic to the rest of the design or the rest of the plastic sheet, in which case it moves. So I don't know if you can see this swirl here on number 19, but this piece of plastic moves out of the way so easily because it's only fixed at one point, and then it's a very small bit that it's fixed to. It moves out of the way and it's so hard to control, and that is the sort of thing that would put me off using that shape. Also, these designs here, again, there's a lot of changing of directions. It's quite hard to use. But what I wanted to tell you actually about some of these shapes. So for example, number 14 here, this detailed pattern here, because of the way that the plastics had to be cut out so that the rest of the plastic doesn't fall out. So for example, you know when you've got a stencil for a letter, here's the letter stencils number 20, you can't have the hole showing on the O, for example, without having the little piece of plastic that connects the two parts of the circle. So you've got a gap in between the parts of the letter, and they've done that on all of these. That is what has happened on a few of these more detailed shapes. You have this discontinuation in the pattern, but you don't have to stick with that. You don't have to take this as part of the pattern. You can rub that out if you're using pencil and then continue the line so that it is one complete swirl. The same as this here. So this looks like some weird sort of pincer, but it doesn't have to be. You can continue that to make it a loop. So you can completely modify these shapes however you want. You can also use these stencil shapes to do whatever you want. You could do a heart inside a circle, or you can do you know, you can connect 6 stars together. You don't have to just use the one shape that they've put. Also, you could have, you could draw somebody, you could put the sunglasses on the person and then have them holding an umbrella underneath a rain cloud. You can combine the shapes, which I really like. So here's number 15, one of the tricky ones, one of the really fiddly ones. That's got lots of pretty shapes, but it's so detailed and fiddly to use that I might not actually be using that one. Also, these letters, I don't know why they've got certain words on them. They've got hope and love and things, and I don't know why they've picked those words rather than just giving us a whole alphabet so that we can make up our own words. Obviously there's this alphabet, but that's only one particular font, so if you wanted some stencils for different fonts, these aren't the stencils that you would choose. There's some more bunting, see, repeated designs again. There's a sort of torn washi tape strip, that's cute. And then we've got these digital numbers, we've got them twice in there, so there's a repeat. We've got another clipboard. We've got a cat, and I really liked the cat at first, but then I noticed that it is broken. This gap between the cat's 2 front legs, the plastic is so thinly attached that it is going to break off, in which case it's going to look like the cat's got one really thick front leg. So these just tiny little designs, they aren't very well thought out. But I love the cat, and I would just draw in that gap between its legs. But it is very cute. Got a hot air balloon, which is cute, but again, it's one of those shapes where it's not well designed, because these move so easily, these pieces of plastic. They move when you're trying to draw around them. Then number 18 I actually really like. It's a very simple design, but there's different sizes in the shapes that are drawn. So if you have a very small space, or if you don't use a big journal but a small journal, then you've got the flexibility of shapes to use as you need. Then number 19, again, we've already talked about that. It is very tricky to use because the shapes are so tiny. And number 20 is letters and numbers with Roman numerals down here. And I don't really like the Roman numerals because the gaps are so tiny that it's quite difficult to neatly draw. So all in all, I do like them. I think they are good value for money, because I'm going to be able to use 80% of the shapes, even if there are a lot of repeats. I think that they're all useful, and if I'm looking through and going, oh, I need a bunting, there's like 30 buntings for me to choose from. Yes, some repeat, but then if I'm not able to find maybe number 8, I can go with number 11, because that's got, you know, these triangles and a line. You can completely manipulate it and modify it for your own needs. So yeah, I do recommend them. I'm going to put a link to where I bought them from, but there will be plenty of other places online that you can find them. And I will be using them in my planner, so when I do a planner walkthrough, I will show you how I've used them. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you again in another video sometime soon. Bye!